In this lesson, we're going to look at how to solve a trig equation with the all sine tan cos as an aid instead of the graph. So if we look at the equation here, cos x equals 0.707, the first thing we had to do was work out the base angle. Now the base angle, you inverse cos here, 0.707, and you get 30 degrees. Now the next thing you have to look at is whether cos x is equal to a positive value or a negative value. In this case, it equals a positive value. So when we draw our all sine tan cos, we look at where the cosine wave is positive. Now the A means all the graphs are positive, so we want to tick that one. S means only the sine wave is positive, and the rest are negative, so we don't want to tick there. T means the tan graph is positive, but the rest are negative, so the cosine wave would be negative there, we don't want that. And finally the C means the cosine wave is positive, so we tick that one. Now to get into the first quadrant, I always imagine a wee line rotating round. So to get into the first quadrant, this wee line rotates round from 0. So you add 0 and 30 to get into your first quadrant to get your first answer. To get into your second quadrant, you go backwards from 180. This is why I've made this line red. You always go forwards or backwards from 180. That's to do with the symmetry of the graphs. The graphs aren't symmetrical about 90 and 270 degrees, so you always use 0 and 180. The third quadrant, you get access to that from adding to 180. And the last quadrant here, you go backwards from 360. So think of a line rotating anti-clockwise round, and you want to stop it. So stop in here, backwards from 360. If you added to 360, you would get into the first quadrant. So the first solution is 30 degrees because it's 0 plus 30. So we can write that down. X equals 30. And to get into your third quadrant, or your fourth quadrant, sorry, you go back from 360. 360 minus 30. And that's your second solution. Okay, let's look at one that's negative. We've got sine x equals negative 0.342. The first thing we want to do is work out the base angle again. You always use the positive value to work out the base angle. So it's 0.342 we inverse sine. That comes out as 20 degrees. So we're looking at sine x equaling a negative value. So sine is negative. Now we now have to tick where the sine graph of the sine wave is negative. Now A means they're all positive, so we don't want to tick this. S means that the sine graph is positive, and we're trying to find where the sine is negative, so we don't want to tick that. T means the tan graph is positive, but that means cos and sine are negative, so that's what we're looking for, so we tick that. And C means the cosine wave is positive, which means sine and tan are negative again, so we're looking for that. Okay, so to get into this quadrant here, we go forwards from 180 with our base angle. So we can write that down. 180 plus 20 gives a solution of 200 degrees. And to get into the last quadrant, we go backwards from 360. 360 take away 20, and that gives us 340 degrees.